Greetings everyone, warm welcome. It's an honour to have you here at the Saphira Centre of Shamanism, where we break down the ancient esoteric practices of shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It's an honour to have you here. Thank you for joining once again. Be sure to find me over on my membership programs in the first and second links of the description of this video. First link for my premium membership service, the Saphira Shamanic School. Perfect if you're wanting to work closely with me as a mentor, whilst gaining access to powerful occult initiation and training webinars taking place multiple times each month. Or if you want something more passive, then check out the Patreon in the second link of the description of this video. An amazing opportunity to gain access to powerful occult pathworkings and initiatory systems, in-depth guidance and full initiatory formulas for the Necronomicon Gnosis, the Sephiroth, the Qliphoth, and many other things, with lots of powerful things up and coming. You can gain access to this Patreon at just £20 per month. Definitely check those out. I look forward to seeing you over there. So recently, people have been requesting me to make more specific videos on the specific Qliphas, and that's exactly what I am going to do, starting with the first two Qliphoth, Nahemoth and Gamaliel, the first two spheres that you face within the Qliphothic initiation process, but extremely important stages of initiation as they teach you how to hold the energies of the later stages of initiation. What you're facing within these first two spheres are psychological and physical personifications of the rejected feminine energy and your sexuality. The first sphere, Nehemoth, which is the black earth, also referred to as the sphere of Lilith, is ruled by Nahemoth, who is the physical personification of the dark feminine. And then you've got Lilith in the next sphere, which is Gamaliel. This is the dark lunar current. And Lilith is the more psychological personification of the dark feminine, both of which create profound levels of feminine and sexual alchemy throughout different aspects of your being. But the role of them is entirely different. Nehemoth, being the black earth, is typically a very grounding sphere in nature, but also very tangible within the physical body as well. When you initiate into Nehemoth, it's difficult to describe that initial feeling when you feel the Qliphothic energy flow into you for the very first time. The only feeling that I can really describe is that, oh my god, everything in my life is now going to be impacted by this system. When you initiate into Nehemoth, the energy comes into your physical body through your root chakra, opens your root chakra, dissolves the structure of it, and then radiates the physical expression of the feminine around your entire body. So the sphere of Nahemoth is often extremely tangible in the body, comes through very physical urges, physical sensations, tingling, heat, heaviness, all kinds of different things. It can also induce a lot of fatigue, as you are basically having your illusions that are repressing the deeper physical aspects of your sexuality completely devoured by Nahemoth and the succubi that rule Nahemoth. Other way round. The succubi that Nahemoth rules. Whereas in Gamaliel, you are facing more psychological and obscene aspects of your psyche in order to make friends with them, so that you can ultimately learn how to work with them consciously. My personal gnosis of initiating through Gamaliel is that it changed my relationship with my sexual energy entirely, taught me how to embrace the balance between restraint, holding on to sexual energy through semen retention, whilst also bringing that into balance with release and ritualistic release. In Gamaliel, you're facing the more psychological aspect of the feminine, which basically means that you get more direct, dream-like visions into different perversions, different obscene aspects of yourself, so that you can ultimately integrate these deeper aspects of self. Both of which are very similar spheres in nature. Okay, it's very much like, okay, we're working with the earth with Nehemoth, and then in Gamaliel we're working in the astral plane, which is the architecture for the physical experience. So in a way, they are very much the same sphere. They're literally like splitting mirrors of each other. You're just dealing with slightly different aspects of the feminine itself. This is a very important initial stage of initiation because it unlocks the lower chakras, dissolves the predefined structure of the lower chakras, namely the root and the sacral chakra, and also unlocks the repressed energy that is stored within, and shows you how to build a relationship with your Kundalini energy, with your life force, so that you can really build a deeper and more intimate connection with your sexuality as a whole, which is the life force that is going to guide you through the later stages of initiation. So we're going to break down these first two Qliphothic spheres in depth, understanding the initiatory power behind them. I'm also going to be sharing some of my experiences within these Qliphas as well, so definitely stay tuned. So the transformation that takes place within the spheres of Nahemoth and Gamaliel is extremely foundational in nature. What I mean by that is that you are going to experience a significant uprooting and restructure of the physical and psychological aspects of your being to ensure that your life is basically structured in a way that is able to process the karma that the Qliphoth is going to make you process throughout the spheres and what is beyond the spheres. So what happens when you initiate into the first sphere, which is Namar, is that the physical personification of the Qliphoth / dark feminine starts to flow through your body, and through resonance alone, you start to experience a type of uprooting in your root chakra, which is basically all about the physical foundations of your reality. So what many people experience, including myself when I went through this sphere, is a significant restructure of the physical environment around you to basically put you into a situation that is going to set you up for a share of different initiatory themes that are going to unfold throughout your initiatory process. What this basically means is that you're going to be put into physical environments that are going to be able to hold your highest level of karma purification. So what this can create is the sensation that you are going backwards initially. It's a very strange feeling. So when you're initiating into that first sphere, many people forget that you are literally expanding and tapping into the crystallized energy that is stuck within the root chakra. And through resonance alone, physical level manifestations and restructuring is going to take place to move you into a necessary physical environment and vessel to be able to hold the evolution that the Qliphoth is going to take you on. The restructure that takes place within the Qliphothic sphere of Nehemoth is going to be in harmony with your past trauma. So this basically means that Namar is going to orchestrate your physical experience to basically experience / live out and break the karmic cycles that were set in motion by your early years trauma. How this works for each individual person is ultimately going to be very, very different. I will explain / touch on my experience in Namar from this perspective. So Namar completely shifted my physical experience in a way that I never thought was ever going to shift. Before I went to the Qliphoth, I had a beautiful flat in Brighton in the UK. I was cultivating this life for myself that I thought was for my best interest. And then immediately upon initiating into Namar, all of that restructured. Within a few days, I was in the process of moving out of my flat and literally moving back into the same bedroom that I was living in when I was an adolescent. Again, restructure of the physical experience back to the original point of the karma imprint that was set in motion by my early years experiences. A few days before initiating into that first sphere, and this was actually the catalyst, was finding out that my mother's cancer had spread and was now severely terminal, and she was given a year / less than a year to live. That was an immediate calling into that first sphere, and those who are preparing for the Qliphoth, it is very unlikely that you are going to be pulled into that first sphere through clarity alone. What often happens for many people is that they start the Qliphoth through a paradoxical initiation. In other words, things fall apart in their day-to-day lives that then basically moves them towards that first sphere. So when I initiated into the sphere, I was literally on my last shamanic training retreat. So I had just undergone 4.5 years of intensive shamanic training and initiation. And I was on my last training retreat about to perform the last initiatory rite, which is basically where you dig your own grave and you lay in the ground in the grave that you've dug overnight. So I spent the day digging my entire grave. And it was earlier on that day, or I think it might have been a day or so before, that I found out that my mother's cancer had spread. And that was a clear guidance from the spirits of the Qliphoth. It is now time to initiate. So once I had dug my grave, I was having a bit of time to rest before I went into my grave. And I had a clear message to say, now is the time. Now is the time to go in to the Qliphoth, because you are about to spend the night in the ground. When is this going to happen again? So I performed the initiatory rite into Nehemoth, felt the energy come into me straight away, and it was extremely tangible in my body, and I was actually shocked at how tangible this process actually was, how tangible this energy really was. And both Lilith and Namar were there to greet me at the gate of Namar, and were extremely welcoming and extremely motherly, extremely nurturing. They were like, look, I can tell you're worried. It's going to be okay. You are going to be fine. You have the right foundation and you are ready to go through this experience. And basically, they also said you are also at a point in your life where you don't really have a choice. If you want to ride the wave of the chaos that is happening within your day-to-day life and not fall into re-traumatizing cycles as a result of everything that's happening within your day-to-day life, then you have to do this initiatory process. So once I had opened the sphere, I then went into the grave overnight that I had dug, and I was laying there and I was feeling the Qliphothic energy flow through me, as well as the Earth's energy. And the thought that I had was, this is the beginning of a whole new journey. And this is so beyond comprehension, and I have no idea how this is going to pan out. So literally, my initiation into that first sphere happened through one of the biggest chaotic events in my life thus far, and that is finding out that my closest family member had a year to live. So after I came out of the grave, you lay in there for about 12 hours, and then I actually slept really well in there. Once I'd come out of the grave, it was then the last day of the retreat. The training concluded, and then I went back home, and within a few days, I was in the process of moving back into my mother's house in order to support her process. Okay, I didn't need to financially, I was fine, but at the time it was a clear message. You have to move back. It was a very clear message. I tried to resist it at first, but it also happened in my physical environment, whereby in my flat there was also chaos, like with the neighbors as well. So it was almost like my physical experience as a result of the Namar initiation, the physical environment around me was literally being uprooted to the point where it's like, you have to go, you have to move back into the original bedroom that you lived in as an adolescent, whilst your mother is in a terminally ill situation. What that was basically doing was orchestrating the entirety of my Qliphothic initiation process. And what this basically means is that it was placing me into a situation that was directly resonant with the core aspects of my past trauma. So a lot of my past trauma, without going into too much detail, is focused around being enmeshed into my mother's dynamics. Okay, so I basically felt very responsible for my mother when I was a child. She was never really okay emotionally, and I felt hugely responsible for her. I also experienced a lot of rejection from her as well. Don't get me wrong, she was also an extremely loving mother, and we also have a very strong connection. But the issue is that that connection sort of went a bit too far into the enmeshment realm. So I was very much enmeshed within my early years parental dynamics, and I also had a father that wasn't very emotionally available, so he didn't really know anything about me or what I was going through emotionally, and would just shame and judge immediately. So I grew up with a very tight enmeshment dynamic, which has basically, up until the Qliphothic initiation, has been impacting me in ways that are so big that I wasn't able to consciously perceive. So initiating into Namar resulted in a physical uprooting that returned me literally into what I would refer to at the time as the scorpion's nest. Okay, the scorpion's nest being the environment that I grew up in as an adolescent whilst living with my mother, who has a terminal diagnosis. So literally, this is where the test of continuous enmeshment basically started to take place throughout my Qliphothic initiatory process. And how this works for each individual is going to really depend on them. It's going to depend on your core past trauma. You may go into Nehemoth and not experience any physical uprooting at all, because your reality may already be basically in a place whereby you are able to process your deepest levels of karma, or maybe your environment will shift later on in the process. But what I've definitely seen for myself, as well as other people who have initiated through Namar, or that through that first sphere, is that you're experiencing a big sort of physical level rupture within the world around you. So you're pulled into the sphere through a physical level rupture, the falling apart slash collapsing of physical foundations that push you into that first sphere. So the role of this sphere is to teach you how to emanate the necessary qualities to be able to take you into the later stages of the Qliphothic initiation process. Now, alongside the physical level rupture, the sphere of Nehemoth is also extremely dreamy and extremely sexual in nature. Okay, Namar, as I mentioned, is the physical personification of the dark feminine, so she communicates with you somatically through the body, okay, through sexual urges. Okay, sometimes it can literally feel like the world around you is like, or the ground is literally like, triggering a different type of internal orgasm. It's a very interesting sensation, like you're walking along whilst in the sphere of Namar, and like everything is very sensual. Okay, you reach out and touch a tree, and then the tree's energy flows into you, and your system is just extremely sensitized as the Qliphothic energy is starting to kind of open you up. What also gets dissolved within the sphere of Namar is a state of unconsciousness. Okay, and for those who have not watched how the Qliphoth controls the world video, I definitely recommend sort of watching that, as it explains the different Qliphas and basically the controlling mechanisms that they weave if you don't initiate into them. What happens with Namar when you don't initiate into it is that you become completely unconscious to the extent of your potential. Okay, whereas the other spheres represent different aspects of repression, Namar basically represses you into a state of unconsciousness, represses your sexual energy to the point where unconsciousness and dissociation is normal. So what happens when you open the Qliphothic sphere of Nehemoth is that the energy will flood into your system, and it will basically start to shed unconsciousness from the root chakra and from the body. What this can manifest is extreme physical fatigue. So the reason for this is because the life force and illusions around the physical personification of your sexual energy is getting devoured, and it can feel like you are being vampirized. Okay, Namar can create the sensation that you are being vampirized because she is a vampire herself. It feels like at times she is draining your physical level vitality. I didn't experience this too much. I think I did for like a day or so, but I didn't experience this too much within my initiatory process. But in people that I've been mentoring, the Nehemoth fatigue is a real thing because the illusions around your physical level of sexual energy and sensuality is being completely devoured by Namar and the succubi that she rules. So the succubi being the personifications of the repressed sexuality and the physical impulses in Namar come through physical impulses, physical sensations. Okay, you may be talking to somebody, they may say something that isn't remotely sexual, and then it will literally trigger like a type of sexual energy to flow through the system. Okay, and this is where you start to undergo a level of sexual alchemy that is beyond what anything else will be able to attain you. Okay, whether it's tantra, dark tantra, what yoga, whatever it is, kundalini energy, whatever it is. In Nahemoth and Gamaliel, you're going to go through a level of sexual alchemy that is so deep and so sensual and so connected to the physical and psychological aspects of your body that it can feel extremely uncomfortable at times because your physical body is just sensitized. Yeah, everything is so sensual. Okay, the way people move is sensual. Okay, and it's less psychological in my view, Namar. Okay, Lilith is the psychological aspect of that, and that is what you face in Gamaliel. Whereas in Namar, you're facing extremely somatic expressions of your feminine energy that are there to eat away at unconsciousness, set the physical personifications of your sexual energy free within your system, and ultimately break through layers of unconsciousness and dissociation so that you can hold the later stages of initiation. Now, I've heard of people, I don't know why people do this, basically initiating into any sphere that they feel like. I heard of someone, for some reason, starting at Gagiel and then going to Gug Shabla and then going to Golachab, then going to Satariel without doing it in order. As much as that, yeah, there's no rules, it's valid. You're not going to be able to actually absorb the energies without going through the spheres in order. Okay, for those who don't know anything about the Qliphothic initiation, you can't skip a stage of initiation. You can open the sphere and bring the energy into you, but the actual alchemy that you're going to be exposed to is not going to be anywhere near as significant as if you did the process in order. Okay, and the reason why Namar is such an important sphere is because literal nervous system dissociation is being shed within Namar. That's why it's such a physical, tangible sphere and works so much on the physical level of consciousness because it's actually weakening the veil between the conscious and unconscious mind. Okay, Namar or the sphere of Nehemoth is referred to often as the dark womb. Satariel is technically the dark womb because it's the mother, okay, the inverted mother. But this is where you enter into the unconscious mind. Okay, this is where you enter into Satariel. Not Satariel, sorry. This is where you enter into Sitra Ara via the sphere of Nehemoth. So basically, this is where you start to build a strong, intimate connection with your shadow and unconscious mind beyond what you've ever done before. Okay, and this is why it's completely ridiculous when people say I've already been through the Qliphothic initiation. I think I had someone comment on my videos recently saying I've already been through this, I think. It's like so sweet, so cute. Okay, because if you've actually gone through these spheres, you will know how significant and how deeply transformative each one is in its own way. So, how Namar appears astrally is it tends to take on a similar form for different types of people. So for me, it was very by the book in the sense of entering into this big sort of womb-like cave. It was literally like the walls were fluid and moving around like that. And the succubi were kind of appearing in some places and then disappearing, appearing and disappearing. And that appearing and disappearing, I felt was symbolic of basically like the sexual urges that flood through to the surface and basically the falsehood's desire to get rid of those urges because they're not accepted in society. So the succubi were very kind of dream-like in nature, okay, appearing in one place, disappearing in another place, appearing in one place, disappearing in another place, okay. And Namar is kind of standing in the middle of this realm, taking on the form of a big vampire-like entity. She can also take on the form of a wraith as well. And then starts to take you through the alchemy, okay? And it's very interesting in terms of the senses and how the senses respond to the initiation through this sphere as well. So when you're actually journeying into it astrally, sometimes it's like I swear I can smell semen, or I swear like I can smell, just like that sex smell. It's like it was that kind of energy. And like, it's almost like the walls are kind of bleeding with like sweat and fluids and also blood as well. It's a very interesting energy. And it's almost like the floor is almost, to me, felt almost like a trampoline. Okay. And that I feel is at least how the physical world around me also manifested as well. Okay, the senses in Nehemoth are extremely heightened. Okay, you might eat like a piece of food and then be able to taste it in a way that you have not previously been able to taste. Okay, your sense of smell might be extremely heightened. Okay, I've even experienced or I've heard, not myself, but I've heard of some people going through this initiatory process who have, say, had a history of sexual abuse, and then they've literally had like the taste of semen in their mouth, or they're literally they're literally experiencing the deep somatic sort of expression and release of this deeper level sexual trauma that is stored within the physical body come through in an extremely deep and somatic way. Now, I think the entirety of the Qliphothic initiation is extremely somatic in nature, but Namar is the most somatic out of all of them, purely apart from Golachab. Golachab is also very somatic as well, but in terms of sensuality and how heightened everything is within this sphere, it's very much there to heighten your senses, to help you to build a relationship with your senses, to help you to embody that physical aspect of your feminine energy and actually be like, it's okay to feel things on this level. It's okay to feel things on this extremely deep level. Now, what some people experience is Namar or Lilith actually attacking them in the astral plane or in the dream state. Okay, many people who I've spoken to have experienced this, whereby Lilith comes and bites them on the neck, or Namar literally attacks them. But this is an abrasive purification method. Okay, it's very abrasive and it's very abrupt and it can feel very cold. But what's basically happening there is that they are shedding the illusions around sensuality as a whole, because the reason why this level of sensuality and sensitivity is repressed so significantly is because for all of us it has been shut down either by our early years experiences, learning that it's not safe to be this sensitive and learning how to basically repress this level of sensitivity in order to fit into the world, or it was basically shut down on the collective level. So basically, what you unlock within the sphere of Namar is deep levels of sensuality, deep levels of physical succubi, physical sexual urges, in order to basically build a relationship with your physical body on a very, very different level. Your senses are heightened, and basically your illusions that are keeping your sexuality repressed and that are basically repressing the physical feelings within the body are completely vampirized. And because we've been so reliant on this state of unconsciousness, this is what can manifest the fatigue. Okay, it's literally like the succubi are feeding off of your illusion, Namar is feeding off of your illusion, and ultimately the level of transformation that takes place through that is there to make you more sensitive as a person and help you to basically work actively with your physical sensations. So very, very somatic in nature is Namar, alongside the significant shifting and restructuring of the physical environment around you to make the environment around you a necessary vessel to be able to hold the karma purification process that the Qliphoth is going to take you on. And that will happen in a way that is extremely personal to you. As I said, for me, it was a restructure in terms of going back into an environment that was the core of my enmeshment trauma in order to facilitate the deeper levels of transformation that would happen from that. Okay, so very, very powerful sphere. There's probably a lot more that I can speak about in terms of Namar. If I think of it, I'll mention it, but those are the core aspects of this sphere. Sexual alchemy on the physical level, vampirism of the illusions and unconsciousness slash dissociation that is disconnecting you from your physical body and your physical sensations, a significant heightening of senses so that you can build a relationship with the physical sensations throughout your body, and an abrasive purification of your physical body in its totality. It's a massive initiatory process, but is extremely important for the later stages of initiation. Now, Gamaliel. Okay, Gamaliel is a split, as I mentioned, is a splitting image of Nehemoth. This is because Gamaliel is the astral plane, the inverted lunar energy. Okay, much like how Yesod is often seen as the Garden of Eden within the Tree of Life, Gamaliel basically represents the astral personification, or what that basically means is the psychological personification of Namar. So to me, this sphere took on a very different form. It was weirdly more solid in nature, but in terms of the images that actually came through were much more around things like BDSM, sadism, masochism, and basically like all sort of deeper perversions around violation, around sort of violent sexuality, all kinds of things that a lot of people have within their psyche but they don't want to own. This is why Gamaliel is referred to as the obscene ones. So this comes through basically through immense sexual passion. Okay, sexual passion that floods through the body and basically enters the psyche on a different level. So after Nehemoth, you've had your physical tangible experience shifted and your unconsciousness devoured by the succubi and by Namar. So now Lilith is going to restructure the psychological aspects of your psyche. And this is where you have to face the various different visions and everything that you've basically judged as ugly, nasty, or grotesque about yourself, past mistakes, okay, like past intentions, whether it's thoughts, feelings, emotions, anything on the sexual level that you have basically learnt it doesn't have a place in the world will flood through to the surface through the sphere of Gamaliel. Now, this is a much less tangible sphere compared to the Black Earth, Nehemoth, because you're dealing with a much more dreamy aspect of self. Now here, Lilith is going to initiate you through helping you to embrace the balance between release and restraint, the key to sexual alchemy. Okay, so people who get stuck within the Qliphothic sphere of Gamaliel get stuck in their perversions and basically remain a slave to their inverted sexual energy. Okay, so for example, somebody who is, say, prostitute, stripper, or sex addict, these are the types of things that are stored within Gamaliel. Okay, basically things that represent that kind of almost like archetype of the slut and the whore that is stored within the psyche of both men and women. Now, Lilith's alchemy is ultimately going to be different depending on the masculine or the feminine. Okay, so I feel that women are going to have a very different experience going through the Qliphothic sphere of Gamaliel, and the level of alchemy that's going to take place is going to be slightly different. But still, men are also going to go through the significant purification within this realm as well. And what they both have in common is ultimately the surfacing of these deeper, obscene visions. So for me, this was a very dreamy sphere. Okay, everywhere I was walking, it felt like it felt like literally Halloween. Like I remember looking up on a billboard and seeing like Back to Hell, and I remember like, seeing coffins and everything everywhere, as well as seeing quite sort of physical expressions of Lilith as well, in terms of, seeing sort of, quite sort of gothic women who weren't sort of wearing many clothes. All of these kind of strange personifications of Lilith started to kind of stream through into the physical, tangible experience. A lot of this initiation, or that took place within this specific sphere, was actually taking place through my partner. So we were kind of, exploring each other on a very deep level. And it really helps within the sphere of Gamaliel if you do have a partner, or you do have an intimate relationship, or if not, you really use it as an opportunity to really be able to sort of feel in to what type of relationship you feel that you want, and really using it as an opportunity to really assess your needs once you are integrating these deeper level perversions within the self. Because once you're integrating these deeper obscene aspects of self, and you're learning how to sit in between restraint and release and exercise them as opposing forces as and when, without falling a victim to one or the other, then this isn't the equilibrium that's needed to build a strong relationship to your sexual energy, and also understand how you want to use that energy as well. So a common trial within this initiatory sphere is having sexual urges that come through so strongly and basically not getting rid of them, but learning how to sit with them and alchemize them. Okay, it's a very tantric sphere in the sense that it's a lot around being present with your perversions, being present with your obscene aspects of self, in order to basically like redistribute that sexual energy into the upper parts of the chakras. Okay, and when you are basically sitting in this sphere and not sort of directly acting on all of these sexual urges, then but you're also looking at them at the same time, then that is when the sexual energy will start to be redistributed into the other aspects of your field. Okay, so given the fact that Yesod, which is the Sephirothic counterpart of Gamaliel, represents the Garden of Eden, there is a lot of symbolism around the snake here as well, and the rejected feminine. Okay, the whole thing around Adam and Eve, Eve being the personification of the feminine that is completely blamed for everything, and basically the villainizing of the snake and the primal essence that causes the snake to then get repressed and stuck in the root chakra and stuck within the sexual organs as a whole. This is where you have to learn how to redistribute your sexual energy out of the sexual organs and into the upper parts of the field. However, you also receive trials of also letting go as well, okay? Because it's here where you learn that actually completely abstaining from sex completely can also fall into the other camp, whereby you are repressing your sexual expression. Okay, and just like how if you're constantly acting on every single perversion that you have, then you're then falling a victim to those perversions instead of actually looking at the unmet need that is behind it. Lilith encourages you to build a relationship with your sexual energy in a way that is really sitting between release and restrain. Okay, so release and restrain, and ultimately taking yourself through processes whereby you are letting your sexual energy build. But then if you release your sexual energy, you're doing so in a way that is conscious, not in a way that is just getting completely lost within the dreamlike perversions of Gamaliel, not getting completely lost within the obscene aspects of self, but actually learning how to use that energy in a conscious way. So this is where, practices such as Tantra for some people can start to come in, be that consciously exploring various tantric practices or unconsciously. You're ultimately learning how to ritualize your sexual expression, okay? And you're ultimately learning how to direct that sexual energy in a way that is optimally balanced and in a way that is actually going to help your evolution. Okay, and what many people do following Gamaliel is that they fall into one camp or the other. Either they're like, oh, I'm going to just literally release all of my sexual energy and not be shamed at all for my self-expression, but then that's falling into the trap of that. Okay, that's falling into the trap of getting completely lost in these perversions, feeling like you need to release. Okay, and that removes your ability to remain present. Whereas when you are restraining and restraining too much, then that can also repress the sexual energy. So you see where we're going here. The sexual energy can be repressed through means of releasing it and restraining it. Okay, both can cause a repression within the system. So you need to learn how to embody the equilibrium. This is why these first two spheres are on the middle pillar of equilibrium, because they're not one thing or the other. Okay, it's the balance of the plus, the masculine, the emanation, the thrust, and is also the balance of the receptivity, the consolidation, and the conceiving as well. So it's here where the sexual energy, if you let it, will change on a significant level, and you learn how to engage with it in a way that is much more healthy and ultimately much more grounded and embodied as well, using the sensitivity and sensuality that you learnt within the sphere of Nama. Okay, so Gamaliel can be either passive or direct. In my view, it goes in cycles with Gamaliel. Okay, you can either have direct visions and uncontrollable sexual urges that come through on the psychological level, or that can start to come through in other ways, or it can start to come through in ways that are much more passive. Again, showing you that it's not one thing or the other, okay? Many people with their sexual expression is black and white, okay? Either we're holding on to our sexual energy and trying to save it, or we are completely releasing it in an unrestrained way, okay? So practices for me personally that involved sort of invocations and the use of the sexual energy within invocations and within rituals came through extremely strongly within this sphere. And I was releasing sexually, but I was also holding on to energy sexually as well. Okay, so it caused that kind of that perfect balance between. Okay, because if you're holding on to sexual energy and actually learning the qualities of Gamaliel, learning how to embody Gamaliel in a way that actually sits with your sexual energy and observes it, then what you're doing is that you're generating that Kundalini fire, and then you're not releasing it to get rid of it, and you're also not restraining it to repress it either. You're sitting in that equilibrium, and that is what causes the fire of the Kundalini to then refine your evolutionary process. And this is something that can take you through the other spheres, because when you are embodying that balance of restraint and release that Lilith brings you within this sphere, then you are able to ultimately tap into the sexual energy to help you purify. Think of it as like a fire, the fire of the Kundalini, that is helping you purify your energy body and then aiding you with the deeper levels of initiation that come through the upper spheres. At the end of the day, it all comes back to the sexual energy. The sexual energy is everything. The feminine energy is everything. And this is why the essences from the upper spheres are always going to have to flow through Gamaliel and Nehemoth before they actually reach you. So these are extremely foundational level spheres. Let me summarize. Nehemoth takes you through the process of physical level restructuring your physical, tangible environment to be a vessel for the later stages of Qliphothic initiation. What it does is that it will restructure your reality, no matter how big or small. It will restructure your reality into a vessel to be able to process the karma that was kicked into motion by your early years experiences. You will experience a big shedding of unconsciousness and physical level dissociation that will bring you back into conscious contact with your body. The sensations in the body will be very intense and your senses will be greatly heightened. You may experience fatigue as the succubi and Namar drain the illusions that are brought by dissociation and unconsciousness as you become aware of how much of your life has been driven by dissociation and unconsciousness, whilst you build a relationship with your physical body on a deep, intimate level. That level of sensitivity will take you into Gamaliel, where you are learning how to unlock the obscene aspects of self and make friends with them, learning how to sit within the pillar of equilibrium between release and restrain, so that you're not releasing your sexual energy to get rid of it and bypass it, and you are also not restraining your sexual energy to repress your urges as well. You are learning how to ritualize your sexual energy, how to tap into the power of Lilith to redistribute that sexual energy into the upper parts of your field and learn how to use it as a powerful purification tool to carry you through the later stages of initiation. Absolutely essential couple of spheres, but I think for now, that is everything that I need to cover. Definitely check out my Patreon if you are interested in Qliphothic initiation. I have an entire section that is dedicated to the Qliphoth that explains the different stages of initiation in depth, as well as providing you with a solid initiatory method. But for now, thank you guys. Definitely hit like and subscribe if this video was helpful to you, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.